Hey guys, thanks for tuning back in as we continue on this crazy train ride called the Importel train, all day today with distributor Importel and all their great brands. And on this session, this is probably one that a lot of folks have been looking forward to, and a lot of dealers always have questions when it comes to I-datalink, ADS, and Maestro. But before we get to that, let's bring on my co-captain, representing Importel, their Director of Sales, Kelly Hawley.
Hey Ben, how you doing?
What's going on, Kelly? How's it going? How you digging Industry Week so far?
It's good. We're back. We're gonna hit it again. Let's go.
It's a busy day for you guys. Busy day for you guys. Maestro, big lineup for you guys, no doubt.
Very big. One of the best integration radio replacement modules on the market today, in our opinion. We're looking forward to learning some new facts about the MRR2, some features and benefits that it offers, and hopefully slide into some of that AR Maestro integration into amplifiers.
Well, you have some pretty high expectations, but luckily for us, we got the man that can deliver the goods. We're going to bring him on right now. He is the training manager for I-Data Solutions and Maestro. His name is Matt Yerger. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Pretty excited to have you. Even Kelly's, I know that face doesn't look excited, but that's excited. Trust me, that is excited. Wow. And so are the dealers, because every time we get some training or get some learn on when it comes to this category, OEM integration stuff, especially with the Maestro lineup, it gives us opportunity, and that's why people are excited to hear about this stuff, because everything you teach provides opportunity. Did I get that right, Kelly?
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So we got an hour together. I know we have a lot to cover. I know you have a presentation.
Yeah. Yep.
So how about we start with that, and maybe we'll see where that goes, and hopefully have some questions. We'll definitely have some questions. Who am I kidding? Yeah, all right, let's go. Let's go with that.
So really the way I wanted to do this is I know a lot of dealers that are watching probably have been or sat through one of my trainings before, but I know there's some probably new dealers to Maestro. So I kind of wanted to start off just by talking about, what we are and what we're about and how our products work. And I'm going to start off with radio replacement, and we'll cover that. And then again, we'll talk about amp replacement a little bit later on. And with radio replacement, we really have just 3 modules. And the fact that we only have 3 modules is important because it allows the retailer to carry a handful of our interfaces, which is really the brunt of the cost to the end consumer and to the dealer, and then carry our T harnesses, which alleviates a lot of inventory dollars and room, actually. So when we first launched in 2012, we came out with the Maestro SW and the RR. Now, the Maestro SW is a universal steering wheel interface. It will retain analog steering wheel controls, so it's really geared towards like your older vehicles that use resistive-based steering wheel controls. But one of the things that we did differently when that product came out is we did what's called dual function. So we gave the ability to the end user to have 2 commands per each button. So a press for the main command and a press and hold for a second command of their choice. It supported all radio brands. So we do the connections for, the blue with the yellow stripe, and then the mini jack. And then what makes it so important about this product is that it was web programmable. So you connected it. It was one steering wheel interface that worked for all vehicles, and it was very easy to program. The other interface that we came out with was the RR. So this was our radio replacement solution. And at the time in 2012, I was actually working at Kenwood, and Kenwood was the first brand that partnered with Maestro. And so I got a lot of interaction with the guys at ADS right from the get-go. And this product was really cool. It did, plug and play through a T harness. It retained your steering wheel controls, and it retained factory infotainment. At the time, it only worked with Ford, but it retained sync, and nobody else was doing that. And then again, it was web programmable. And then as it progressed, we added some additional screens, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Now, 2 years ago, we started talking about RR2, which a lot of people have the misconception that this is going to replace the RR, but it's not. It's going to be kind of a step-up module to the RR. So we're going to continue selling the RR, and then you'll have the option to upgrade if you choose to the RR2. So the RR2 gives you everything that the RR does. It works with all of the existing T harnesses, but it also adds Bluetooth, built-in Bluetooth for mobile flashing. So the RR and the SW, you have to plug them into a computer, either a PC or a Mac, and flash it using our WebLink desktop. With the RR, you still have that option through USB, but you also have the ability to do it through a mobile phone, either Android or iOS. Now that currently, the app is not currently available for iOS. You can beta test it with Android. It's up now, but it is coming very, very soon. It also adds 3 programmable outputs, which I'm going to talk about in a second. It also adds some compatibility for newer vehicles. Some of our newer Subarus, Hyundai, Kia, they have 3 CAN channels in them, where the RR2 or RR only has 2 CAN channels. The Maestro RR2 has 3 CAN channels. And then lastly, it adds compatibility for escort radar. So the RR does for K40, the RR2 does both K40 and escort. And just to elaborate on what I was talking about, the programmable outputs, this particular feature is definitely one that gets a lot of buzz. A lot of people talk about it. It's very cool. And we're really one of the first to do something like this. So essentially what this feature is it gives you 3 outputs, negative outputs, 350 milliamps. And you can really use these to activate pretty much anything on 12 volts. But what makes these different from some of your relay-based programmable output things is that you can use something that's on CAN and convert it to an analog output. And that's really the most important part that you can take away from this. And before I go any further, I want to mention that up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a YouTube video. We have a YouTube video on this. It's about 10 minutes long. Honestly, for me to fully go over this feature, it would take me at least a half hour. So I suggest anybody that's interested in learning more about this to watch this video, because it fully explains, it gives examples, it shows you how to program it. So it's a really nice feature. But the basic example that I have here of where this feature would really be very useful is if you were, say, installing a aftermarket blind spot detection system. Well, any blind spot detection system is going to require a couple things. It's going to require VSS, and it's also going to require left and right turn signal. And in most new vehicles, all of those are going to be on CAN. So you need some way to provide them. Well, we basically can give that through the programmable outputs. Because we read the turn signal information on CAN, we can then tell the RR to convert that to an analog output to connect to your aftermarket ADAS system. So that's just one example, but you could activate exterior lighting using a steering wheel button. The sky's the limit on what you can do with this feature. And I have a little picture of the programmable output loader. Currently, it is available on PC right now. Eventually, we will be integrating it into our current WebLink desktop, but for now, we're just doing some testing on it to make sure everything's 100% before we incorporate it into WebLink. The other nice thing too is with some of our radio partners, we are adding the ability to activate those programmable outputs through touchscreen buttons. So with most radios, you have the ability to use a button in the car, a factory button, a steering wheel button, turn signal, whatever it may be. But with the Kenwood, and I'm sure Kenwood and JVC trainings, they probably talked about this, is the ability on their new 10.1 inch. They have 3 buttons that you can use to activate those outputs. We give you a whole bunch of icons that you can use, and then it also gives you the ability to label the button whatever you want. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is our different firmwares that we have for the RR and RR2. So there's been a misconception, I think, in the industry since it launched, was that, well, if I'm selling a Maestro RR or a Maestro RR2, I have to use a Maestro compatible radio. And that's not the case. And that's one of the things that I wanted to address here, is that we have 2 different firmwares. We have a DS firmware and we have an AS firmware. So what you're looking at here is our DS firmware. So this would be for Maestro compatible radios. So if you're using a Maestro compatible radio, it's going to have a dedicated I-datalink connection on the back of it. It's a serial connection. It's 4-pin, and you can see there's a 4-pin serial cable that runs from the RR into the back of the radio, as well as a 3.5 millimeter. And that allows us to do a lot of extra things, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Now, if you're using a non-Maestro compatible radio, really everything's going to pretty much stay the same. You're going to use the same T-harness. The connections to the radio will be the same. We're still going to retain your steering wheel controls. The only difference is you're not going to use that dedicated serial connection because it's not there on a non-Maestro compatible radio. Instead, you will use the steering wheel interface connector in that we provide, or harness that we provide with the RR, and that will just connect to the steering wheel interface. So essentially, we'll do the radio install. It will retain your factory backup camera. It will retain your steering wheel controls. It's just not going to do a lot of the extra features that I'm gonna elaborate here on in a second. So when you're using our DS firmware with a Maestro compatible radio, we add a variety of really cool extra features. So the first is going to be things like performance gauges. So we add a suite of gauges. You can display up to 5. We give you a whole bunch to choose from. We also have this really cool thing called Track Pack, which gives you 1/4 mile, 0 to 60, and your braking distance, which is useful obviously for some customers. For others, not so much, but it's a really neat feature. Gauges, altogether. Vehicle information is one of my personal favorites. You get a lot of really useful information here, including your door, trunk, and hood status. So if a door is open, it will alert you. It will do individual tire pressure monitoring, and in some of the newer radios and cars, it will also do tire temperature. And then last but not least, it is a full scan tool. So it actually connects to the vehicle's OBD2, and if there is a check engine code on, the check engine code light will illuminate. You select on it, and it will allow you to view any active codes and even attempt to reset those codes if it's a non-reoccurring code. Parking assist. So when this feature came out, it was actually a full screen feature, but that was pre every single car having a backup camera. Now every single car has a backup camera. So what we've done is we've overlaid it onto the backup camera screen. And essentially what it's doing is it's providing you visual monitoring of your parking sensor. So a lot of cars come with backup sensors. Some of them come with side sensors and front sensors. We can visually give you monitoring of all of them. So if you're backing up, you're going to see the direction of which the object is coming from and the distance the object is away from you. And then, of course, dynamic parking lines. This is a neat feature because it can be added to a vehicle that didn't have dynamic parking lines. And for those of you that may not know what dynamic parking lines are, they're just the lines that move with your steering wheel. And it's great because we actually read it exactly and manipulate it exactly the way the factory would, because we read steering wheel angle, we read the vehicle speed. And so we're able to manipulate and make those work exactly the way they would from the factory. And then last but not least, climate controls, which was a really important one for us because this just opened up an entire, group of vehicles that we were otherwise unable to touch. A lot of your newer vehicles like Ford and Chrysler, all of their climate controls are done on the touchscreen. And there are some features that can only be done on the touchscreen. So for us to give the ability to duplicate or replicate those climate controls on an aftermarket radio is important. And in fact, when you go into our fit guide on I-datalink-maestro.com and you type in a vehicle, if that vehicle has climate controls on the touchscreen, we automatically filter out any radios that are non-Maestro compatible and tell you have to use a Maestro compatible radio because we need those touchscreen climate controls. Some other features of climate controls, some of the more advanced features we do are things like Ford's active contour seats. So this was a question that came up because a lot of dealers were like, well, I see, you're supporting radio replacement for my Ford Touch. I have a customer with a Ford F-150 Platinum, and it's got massaging seats in it. Can you retain that? Well, all of that's controlled on the factory touchscreen. The answer to that is yes, we do retain all of that. So if they replace the radio and you go into the climate control screen, there'll be a seats button. When you press it, it's just going to give you all of your controls for lumbar, your bolster, and the active massage. Some other exclusive features that we do, and this is one I really put a lot of emphasis on, is vehicle settings. 5 years ago when these features started popping up, a lot of customers and even dealers just ignored them because most of the features in there were not something a customer would need to gain access to, things like lighting control or door lock options. They set them once and leave them. But those menus have grown considerably over the last few years. You're starting to see things like your safety and convenience. So the ability to turn off your front collision. In the Dodge Ram, there's the tow package is controlled through the factory touchscreen. So it is vital that the customer has access to all of these menu items. So when you're using a Maestro RR or RR2 with a Maestro compatible radio, we take the factory menu and completely duplicate it onto the aftermarket radio. It will look slightly different, and the way you get to it will be slightly different, but the structure of the menu will remain exactly the same. So from a learning curve standpoint, there really won't be much, and the customer will not lose any functionality in their vehicle, which again, in today's world is so important. Some other things that we're doing a little more advanced is with cameras, with reverse cameras in particular, factory reverse cameras. A lot of your factory reverse cameras have multiple views now, right? It used to just be, I had a backup camera, and can you retain it? Now it's, I have a factory backup camera that has a normal view, a wide view, and a top view. I also have a front camera, or I have a lane watch camera, right? So it's not only just the reverse camera, it's the views as well as any additional cameras they have. So in the case of a factory backup camera that has multiple views, we have a couple different ways that we can retain that. The first is when the vehicle is placed in a reverse and the backup camera appears, we use a steering wheel button to control or cycle between the different views, right? So normally it would be done on the factory touchscreen, but because that's gone, we need some other way of controlling it. So take this as an example. This is a Honda. So when the vehicle is in park or drive, you hit the source key, it's going to change the source. But when you put it in reverse, the source key now will change the camera views only while it's in reverse. So we're just basically hijacking that source key to control the camera angles while the vehicle's in reverse. The other thing that always comes up, especially with Honda, is lane watch, right? So a lot of your Hondas have a lane watch camera. It's the camera in your side view mirror. When you turn your turn signal on, that camera appears. And the answer with us is absolutely. If you use our HO2 harness, we give you the normal backup camera, and we also give you the lane watch camera interface as well. The only thing that you really need to remember is that the aftermarket radio has to have assignable camera inputs, and pretty much all of your current day radios have assignable camera inputs. So it really would only be an issue with an older radio. But again, because we read turn signal data on CAN and we're communicating with the radio through that serial port, when you turn your turn signal on, we're telling the radio, go to that input and show the lane watch camera. This is a really great feature because not only will it retain the factory lane watch camera, but if you wanted to add one aftermarket, it can do that as well. And we actually even take it a step further by giving you the ability to designate when you want that camera to come on. So like I have it in my car, and one of my complaints was I live in an area where I don't have a lot of two-lane roads. So I don't want it coming on while I'm just driving around town. I want it to come on only when I'm on a major highway. So we give you the ability to set it to come on at a specific speed, 10 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour. So if you have it set to that, it will only switch on if the vehicle's traveling or exceeding that mile per hour. Some other camera integration that we do, we have three different features, or two different features I'm showing here is smart parking and low speed trigger. So really what this is talking about is the integration of a front camera. So if you've ever driven in a vehicle that had a factory front camera installed on it, then you know the way that camera works. When you parallel park, you pull up to the spot, you put the vehicle in reverse, the rear camera comes on, you pull forward, you put it in drive, the front camera comes on, and it will continue that cycle until you've parked. Well, in an aftermarket world, that's a little bit more difficult because, as we all know, all of your aftermarket radios have a reverse camera trigger wire, but they do not have a front camera trigger wire. Even if they have a secondary camera input, they don't have a front camera trigger wire. Well, when using the RR or RR2 with a Maestro compatible radio, again, that communication that we have through the serial cable allows us to tell the aftermarket radio when the vehicle is in drive and when it is in reverse. So we're basically completely mimicking or copying how this sequence is done from, in an aftermarket scenario. So you can add an aftermarket front camera and basically make it work like a factory front camera. We also do that with low speed trigger. So low speed trigger, it just allows us to have the front camera turn on at specific speeds, if the vehicle's traveling under 5 miles an hour, and we give you a whole bunch of settings to really, set up that front camera trigger to come on when you specifically want it to. And then last but not least, to make it as simple as possible, we also give you the ability to activate your front camera from steering wheel control. Some people just want to be able to drive, press and hold a button, front camera comes on, and we give you all of those scenarios with the RR and the RR2. So there are some of the more exclusive features that we do when you're using a Maestro RR2 with a RR or RR2 with a Maestro compatible radio. Some other things that we're doing too is advanced safety. This is a really big category, and it's only going to get bigger. Is the integration of your advanced safety systems. So collision avoidance, blind spot detection. A couple years ago, these features were very, I don't want to say basic, but they were just limited on the way they alerted the driver. I have a 14 Ford that has blind spot, or I guess it's lane departure. And it just gives me a little LED indicator in my side view mirror. So unless you're looking at your side view mirror, it doesn't really do a good job of alerting you. So a lot of the newer cars will give you an audible alert through a specific speaker in the car. So take, cross traffic alert. You're merging into another lane. If the alert goes off, it's going to play a chime through a specific speaker in the car. Most aftermarket interfaces will just take one chime speaker and sum all those alerts into one speaker. So it doesn't really work the way it did from the factory. But if you're using the RR and an RR2 and a radio that supports this capability, we will play the chime in the correct speaker in the vehicle. So the integration is exactly the way it's done from the factory.
I just want to chime in 1 second here, Matt, and I can't stress how important this particular segment is in ADAS, which is the driver safety, collision avoidance, and all this stuff. And you're completely right. It's good to see that Maestro has already taken an initiative to go to that length of emulating the factory systems. But even in the aftermarket, what's going to happen is a lot more dealers and consumers are going to realize, because the biggest myth about ADAS is, if I didn't buy it at the dealer, then I can't get it. Right. That's that tide is literally coming in right now as we speak.
Yeah. So, and you also don't want a customer coming in a week after you put the radio in and going, it doesn't work like it did when I bought the car, and exactly. and that's a really big one. And that's really, I feel like, our philosophy with all of our interfaces is that we want the customer leaving and not losing any features, but gaining features, right? And that's really what we're trying to do with this integration. We're trying to make sure that when they replace the radio, that it's going to work exactly the way it did when they bought the car,
if not better.
If not better.
If not better. Exactly.
If not better.
Yep.
All right. What about newer solutions?
Yes. So as far as solutions, as you can see, we have quite a few T harnesses now. We are always working on new solutions. Some of our newer ones that either are shipping now or will be coming soon include RSU3, and you can see up in the upper right hand corner, I have it whether it's shipping now or it's coming soon. So this is going to support all of your newer Subaru vehicles. This is one of the newer solutions that requires the RR2. So the newer Subarus have 3 CAN channels in them, and we need to be able to speak on all 3 of those. So if you notice on the box at the bottom, it says for RR2. If it's a solution that will work on either, it'll say RR or RR2. If you go to our fit guide, it's going to tell you that it will require the RR2. But this will retain all the factory settings menus. It will retain the camera, the cluster display, and it retains the factory amplifier. RMI1, so this is going to be Mitsubishi. This is a nice solution because it's one T harness and it covers all Mitsubishi vehicles from 2008 and up. And it also works in amplified. So it'll work with the vehicles with the Rockford Fosgate system in them. Retains the factory settings menu, the camera, the display in the cluster. All the factory climate touchscreen controls are retained as well. RHK2, so we have RHK1 out now. That is for your non-amplified Hyundai and Kia. RHK2 will be for your amplified Hyundai and Kia vehicles. And this will actually include a new interface in the box with it. It's called the RSPDIF. So if you're familiar with Hyundai, Kia amplified vehicles, they use a digital output, a SPDIF output. What the RSPDIF is going to do is it's going to take that output or your analog output of your aftermarket radio, and it's going to convert it into an SPDIF to go into the factory amplifier, essentially retaining your factory amplifier. We will also have that RSPDIF that will be offered as a separate module as well, so that you can purchase it, if you're not using our product. But we obviously emphasize it works better with our product. So, and this is another solution that does require the RR2 as well. We also have some new accessories for Hyundai Kia, UHK1 and UHK2. They look very similar, but they are different depending on the year vehicle that it's going into. This replaces the factory USB hub in the center console, and then it just connects directly into the back of your aftermarket radio, allowing the aftermarket USB to work in the factory location. The nice thing about this is, number one, is it works with CarPlay and Android Auto. And the second is we give you dual illumination on them, because in some of the vehicles it came with blue illumination, some of it came with red. There's just little jumpers on there that allow you to set it so it matches the factory illumination. Attention to detail, right?
No, my wife has a Soul, and that I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the other thing about this is it keeps the factory look the same. It's not adding anything.
You would never even know.
We're not changing anything in the vehicle. It's just adding the USB and keeping the factory USB alive.
Finding a location for an aftermarket USB has been a struggle for years. So doing this type of integration just makes the whole thing seamless. So Harley Davidson.
Ooh, hot topic.
This is a big topic, and it's kind of right now is a great time because we have a whole bunch of new Harley Davidson products that are coming out. So we just released RHD1, which is our older Harley Davidson radio replacement T-harness. So this works with the Maestro RR, not to be confused with our HD1, which went with the SW. This is a T-harness to work with the RR or RR2 for your 06 to 13 Harley Davidson. It retains the handlebar controls and gives you the dual functions just like we do in a vehicle. We can control the radio dimmer from a handlebar button, which, I'm not a Harley guy, so that's just something that has come up, and we wanted to put emphasis on it, that if you're doing a double dim screen, obviously at night it's very bright, you have the ability to dim it. You can activate front and rear cameras from a steering wheel button, right? So we talked about that with doing it in a vehicle. We can do the same thing here. We can also do side cameras because we read the turn signals on CAN, and we can tell the aftermarket radio to activate a side view camera. Of course, it adds gauges, and we do some different things in gauges for Harley than we do in vehicles. We give you gear position as an example. And again, it's compatible with RR and R2. RHD2 does a lot of the same things that RHD1. Obviously, it's for your newer Harley Davidson vehicles. So again, steering controls, camera integration, radio dimmer, but it also retains the factory amplifier. So if you're keeping your factory amp, we do retain that. We also give you control of the factory amplifier settings from the aftermarket touchscreen. It adds gauges, but it also adds vehicle information. So we can read tire pressure monitoring on Harley, as well as battery voltage. And then again, you can use the RR or RR2 on this. We do have a USB extension for Harley. This is just your standard USB extension, but it has a rubber grommet for the pass-through. Again, we'll work with Android Auto and CarPlay. And then the other product that we have is our DHD2. So this is an amp bypass for Harley Davidson. It comes with 4 of these in the box because it will work with up to 4 if you're trying to bypass 4 amplifiers, we give you all 4 plugs in the box. We also have an amp replacement solution for Harley, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So, so the other thing I wanted to talk about is our dash kits and kind of what separates us from our competition is, a few things. The first is the quality of our dash kits. So the fit and finish on our dash kits, we take a lot of time and we spend a lot of time developing our dash kits so that they have a very factory fit and finish to them. And we also include metal brackets with our dash kits. So, it's held into the dash very structurally sound. And then we also, in a lot of cases, provide a similar USB integration like I showed for Hyundai Kia. So, and a lot of times it'll be a pocket in the dash kit that has a USB pass-through, HDMI, and auxiliary. Sometimes it's a separate USB hub replacement. So it just depends on the vehicle. But the bottom line with our kits is they always fit and they really, really look factory in the vehicle. So, and then we have some new solutions that are coming out soon or are shipping now. Here's one example is Ram 1. This was a collaboration that we did with Scosche. They actually were already building the plastics, but didn't do any of the electronic side of it. So we kind of partnered with them, and we're packaging their kit with our metal brackets, our T-harness. So really you just need to add the RR or RR2 in pretty much any one of our dash kits. You have to add the RR, RR2, but in this particular one, we do the T-harness, the dash kit, as well as the brackets. FOR1 is also shipping now. For those of you that are familiar with our MFT1, this is very similar to MFT1. This is just for your older Ford vehicles, so it's going to work with your F-150s, the Flex, and essentially this is pre-My Ford Touch. So it's sync, but with navigation, right? So this is going to be very popular in, say, your Raptors, right? A customer wants to replace the Raptor. It just basically retains the factory bezel and just flushes your aftermarket radio out, retains all the radio controls, and gives you your touchscreen climate. So again, plug and play. It's a very easy kit to install. It's very straightforward. PAC1, so this is going to be for Chrysler Pacifica and Voyager, your new Chrysler Pacifica and Voyager. We include both trims in the box. So there's a silver and a gloss black trim. But the great thing about all of our kits for Chrysler is they work in pretty much all your trims. So with the exception of Ram 1, your Jeep Grand Cherokee kit, your Cherokee kit, your Durango kit, the PAC1, they will work with, if you have the very entry-level 4-inch radio all the way up to the 8-inch screen with, Harman Kardon in it. So, you can sell this with confidence knowing that it will work in all of the trims and it will retain all of the features. So again, same thing, factory fit and finish. It includes the media hub. And this one, it will be coming soon. WJL1, this is also a very exciting one. Yeah. That's coming soon. The Wrangler is also a very hot, vehicle right now. A lot of aftermarket parts for it. So the WJL1 will work in 18 and up Wrangler and the 20 and up Gladiator. Again, works in all the trims. For those of you that have worked on these vehicles, there is some depth restrictions, so it does need to be a shallow mount radio. But again, like all of our kits, and I know it's hard to see here, but we actually have the same factory texture on the kit itself.
I can see that.
Yeah, it's very OEM.
It kind of matches the handlebar texture.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So we just literally took the same texture off the factory bezel and replicated it on ours. So it's going to look very factory finish when it releases. Hopefully soon.
That's going to be a popular piece.
Matt,
yes.
one thing I notice about all the kits, they're probably one of the best fit and finishes I've seen. They match the vehicles almost precisely the same as the factory
Yeah.
bezel that came out, which is
Exactly.
really nice when doing upgrades.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't install like I used to. I mean, I still do, a few here and there, but every installer will tell you they've had those kits where they've had to fidget with it to get it to fit right in the dash, or they had to trim a little bit off that. You will never have that problem with our dash kits. They fit exactly the same in every single vehicle, and it always is, like I said, OEM grade fit and finish. So you're spending less time fighting with the dash kit to get it in there. It's just going to snap in like the factory bezel does. So yeah, that concludes dash kits, and then I wanted to move on to amplifier replacement, unless there's any questions or comments you want to make.
Yeah, I would just like to touch on one thing with regards to the RR and the RR2. As a dealer or a dealer stocking item, it's less SKUs, more applications, which is, everybody's looking to stock less and sell more. Well, here's an actual option and a company that's thought it through that gives you really 3 working SKUs that can do more options than the majority of the competitors on the market.
Yep.
Packaging is super nice too. I have to commend the marketing and design team. It just looks so clean. And when it's these are not the type of things. Usually, I mean, back in the day, they just used to hang in a bag. You know what I mean? In the back of the shop. This is not a piece that you would really show the customer. But if you had a little display of these, it looks nice.
And again, whether it's designing dash kits or writing firmware for vehicles, we pride ourselves on our quality through the whole entire process, right? Our packaging, the way we develop it, every single thing. So, most retailers that carry our products regularly will tell you it's the first one they go to, and it's the one they have the least amount of problems with. So
it's the one I would show the customer.
Yeah. Yep.
Here's the rate, but this is what you would need to go. Oh, okay. Yeah. Nice. Sold.
Yep.
So
if you look at features and benefits, there's so many features that you guys can, turn on or change, and they still look exactly the same or darn close to what the factory does. Yep. So the learning curve for the customer as he leaves is way less, which means way less. So it's way less timing as you as a store with your presentation, your delivery. It's so much easier to deliver that vehicle.
I have a question. I mean, would you not recommend this on the demo board somewhere, showing just how seamless the integration and the interface is?
Well, you could do that. We do have a module called the Demo RR, which allows you to. It's basically an RR that's locked into demo mode. So you do have to flash it for the radio, but and put the serial number in. But once you connect it, it's going to unlock all the Maestro features. So the gauges will work, the climate controls will work, everything will be unlocked so that the customer can actually see what it's going to look like in their vehicle. So yes, essentially you could take this dash kit, put it on your display board somewhere, put a radio in it, and put a demo RR on it, and give them an idea of how it's going to work. Obviously not all the menu items and stuff are going to be there because it's vehicle specific, but the majority of them will be there so that they can see it.
The trend that I'm seeing is, you need to have a display in your store about OEM integration. Because it's hard to verbalize it without actually showing them how seamless, the solutions are.
Which is exactly why we made the demo RR, right? We made that because dealers were like, hey, I want to be able to show what the gauges are going to look like or how their climate controls are going to work. And that's exactly what that is intended to do is give them a visual guide while they're on their sales floor, talking about it. So
okay.
And for any guys that need that demo RR, we have that in stock and we are shipping it. So
I mean, that would be clutch for me if I was pitching like a customer or a dealership.
Yeah, it's hard when you're talking to a customer and you're like, oh, well, your climate controls are just going to work on the aftermarket radio. Sometimes they just don't. They can't.
No, the dots don't connect.
They don't understand how we're able to do that. So giving them a visual representation of that is key. And again, it's relatively low cost to the dealer. And I have dealers that have 5, 6 of them on their display board.
No doubt. Here's your climate control. Oh, check out these cool. Here you can do your quarter mile, your G, all that stuff. That's all important information.
Well,
So-
and more importantly too, each radio brand looks different, right? So the climate controls on a Pioneer are going to look different than on a Kenwood than on an Alpine. So you can have one on every single brand and say, this is what it's going to look like. Which one do you like the best? You know?
Yeah, fair enough.
So yes, like I said, the Demo RR is an important product to the retailer for sure.
Okay, let's jump into amplifier upgrades.
Yeah, so this obviously is the second part of this training. You know, when like I said, in 2012, when we launched the RR and the SW, there was strictly radio replacement. You know, I think everybody will agree that although radio replacement is still very relevant today, amplifier replacement is quickly catching up, because, you know, you have a lot of vehicles that customers are like, hey, look, I love the radio. It does everything I want it to do. It does CarPlay, it does Android Auto, whatever. And I like the way it looks, but I can't stand the factory audio, right? I just want to upgrade that and make it sound better. And so the idea was with AR and with DSR1 was we wanted to be able to provide a plug and play solution that avoided some of the struggles that we were working with up until that point. And what I mean by that is things like, you know, channel summing, right? Installers spending a half a day just figuring out which speakers go where and summing everything into a channel, you know, and then de-equalizing it, detuning it, and then sending it to an aftermarket amplifier. That was a lot of time. You know, getting around all of that was where the AR and the DSR1 come in. So whenever I talk about these products, I always start off with talking about how they or the problems that we run into. So basically, this is just a diagram of a generic diagram of a factory audio premium audio system. So in this case, it's a Ford. We all know Ford up until recently used the Sony audio, but this same exact, you know, architecture here applies to Chrysler. It applies to JBL, Toyota with JBL. It applies to other brands as well, but the general architect of it is the same regardless of the vehicle. And what I mean by that is, unlike a traditional non-amplified system, the outputs coming out of the back of the radio don't change with the volume, right? So you turn the volume knob up on the radio, it just stays the same all the time, right? On a non-amplified, you turn it up, the outputs coming out of the back of the radio go up and down, they fade front to rear. In a premium audio system like this, out of the back of the radio is just two channels of audio, left and right, and it does not do anything when you turn the volume up. It does not do anything when you fade. It does not do anything when you increase the bass or lower the bass. That all is happening at the factory amplifier, right? It's all done through CAN, through a digital message sent from the radio to the amplifier. And this gives the factory, you know, system a few advantages. One is they can install an amplifier that has a ton of DSP processing and very little power and cheap speakers, right? So they just, you know, tune the heck out of it.
And put a brand on it and sell it for a lot of money.
Right, and put a brand on it, exactly.
Tune the heck out of it,
and that's why a lot of people complain about, oh, it does, I like the way the radio looks, but the audio sounds really horrible because it's just processed, you know, over-processed. And so, again, prior to something like the AR or the DSR1, you couldn't take that factory amplifier out. You had to leave it in the car and take all of the channels, in which most cases you're dealing with, in some of the older cars, 10 channels, and some of the newer cars, they've got like 24 channels of audio in them. And so you've got to take all those outputs, and none of them are full range. They're all crossed over. You got to sum them together and then take out as much of the processing as you can and go to an aftermarket amplifier. That takes time. It's very expensive. And so the solution with the AR was to make a more cost-effective solution so that the customer could spend more of the money on the amps and speakers, which is really what's going to make the difference. And that's exactly what the AR does. So essentially, just like RR, we do T-harnesses. So we T-harness directly into the aftermarket amplifier when using an AR. We read the messages coming from the radio, and we basically just translate them into a way that the aftermarket amp DSP can understand. So the bottom line is that when the customer picks up the car, the only thing that's going to be noticeably different is the sound, right? The function of it is going to work exactly the same. They're not going to have excessively loud door chimes or Bluetooth calls that play through every speaker in the car. Everything is going to work exactly the way it did. It's just going to sound better, and it's going to take a lot less time from an installation standpoint because of our plug and play T harness. So the DSR1, although is slightly different than the AR, works similar. It uses the same T harnesses, but the difference is obviously the audio and the messages all go into the DSR1, and we give you 8 RCA outputs that you can go to any amp you want. With the AR, you have to use a Maestro compatible amplifier DSP, right? So in this case, Arc Audio is a good example. They have a handful of products. I think they're IPS 8.8. They have their PS 850, which connect to the AR, and we do all of the audio handling, and then they do their magic. So,
question, Matt. Mm-hmm. The green connection between the Maestro AR and the amplifier, what type of cable is that?
That's the same 4-pin cable that you would use on the RR to the back of a radio. It's just a 4-pin data connection. In most cases, I think in the case of Arc, they have a specific one, but there are some that use a 4-pin. But it is a data cable.
It's a data cable, but is that supplying a pre-amplified input sound to the amp, or no?
No.
Yeah. So the cool thing about what we do with AR is, and when we went into this, we said we don't want to touch the audio, right? We're not an audio company. We make CAN bus interfaces. We want to send the audio from the radio directly into the amplifier or DSP. And then all we want to do is translate the messages from the radio and tell the amp what to do with that audio signal.
Gotcha.
Right. And that was really our goal from the get-go. So we don't do any audio on our side. Only thing we do is send audio from our T harness directly into, in this case, the PS 850. And then that serial cable coming out of the AR plugs directly into there. And then, like I said, it works much like the radios do, is we're just communicating with it. So we're mimicking the way the factory system works.
What this doesn't show is on the back of that radio, there's a T harness, right?
Yes.
And the blue and red cable coming up from the amplifier is plugging into that T harness.
Correct. Yes. Okay. This is just obviously a simplified diagram of it, but I'm going to show that a little bit more involved in a second. So
Ben, to break it down maybe a little bit further, what it's doing, or they're just taking the signal from the head unit or the source unit, removing the amplifier that has all the DSP processing, time alignment, and all that kind of stuff out, which now provides a 20 to 20 or whatever frequency,
full range,
full range, whatever it's able to provide, full range to the amplifier or processor
or DSP amplifier
to that, and then everything else is done.
But but only extracting the functionality of the signals that have functionality, so that it can continue to operate as it was before. Okay, sweet.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we for amp replacement, or I shouldn't say that. I should say for
AR. I need to tell you, Matt, we have 5 minutes left on this session.
That's fine. Okay. I'm gonna just kind of scroll through this really quickly. But for amp replacement or AR and DSR1, we have 2 types of harness. We have amp replacement, so premium audio if your car has a factory amplifier, and essentially this is that diagram I was talking about. You have your T harness that would or your wiring harness that would connect to your factory amp. Our harness replaces it, goes into the Maestro compatible DSP or amplifier, and then one goes into the AR, and then you have that 4-pin cable. Same thing with DSR1. It just looks slightly different. We also have non-amplified T harnesses. So these are our D harnesses. So if you have a vehicle that's non-amplified, it would go behind the radio, right? So the DSR1 would get installed behind the radio, and then the harness would extend back to the aftermarket amplifier. And again, in this case, you can use any amp you want. We do have some new harnesses. We have Harley AHD2. The one thing I will point out about this is it does reflash the radio. You can go to our website for more information. I'm not, because I only have a couple minutes, and there's a few other things I want to talk about. Mitsubishi, we have, these are some of our coming soon harnesses. AHK 1, 2, and 3. All right, so these cover all your Hyundai, Kia amplified vehicles. We do make an ACE SP-DIF adapter for those as well. It is a optional accessory, but it is required for all 3 of those solutions. AVW1, so I believe this is MK6 platform, 09 to 13. And then really what I wanted to get to, and that's why I kind of rushed through this, is I wanted to talk about some of our support pages. So the first is we have a dedicated phone support line. So for any dealers that haven't used I-datalink or Maestro, we have the best tech support guys, period. Anybody that has called our tech support lines will tell you we have the best. They are super knowledgeable. They are very helpful. We have an iData Facebook group, iData Tech Facebook group. There's always somebody on there answering questions. And then lastly, for Maestro, we have our own YouTube channel. We have a ton of videos on our YouTube channel. We have one on the AR that goes in depth and explains how it works, why you want to use it. We have ones on the RR. We have install videos for our dash kits. So we have a lot of different videos on our YouTube channel. So go check it out, subscribe, whatever. You know, that's really the best places to get support.
I feel so satisfied. I don't know about you.
I feel very rushed there, but it's hard.
I know.
Our product is very hard to go through in 50 minutes. I mean, it's just a lot of information, and you know, we do the best we can to get what we can across in 50 minutes.
And that was just the Maestro side of things.
I know.
Yeah.
One
category.
I do mean that, though, because I feel like you did a great job, Matt, explaining everything. There was a lot of question marks I had. I am not that, you know, I haven't installed in a long time, but certainly trying to get caught up on all this technology.
Yeah.
And I can hear it from the feedback from the dealers of the challenges that they have. But the way that you've laid it out with the products and where they fit for what need, I think gives any shop confidence and knowing that there's that support. And if obviously through Importel, they can support you as well. There's a solution. So don't say no to the customer. Say yes.
Right.
Say yes.
Yeah.
Say yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Can't thank you enough, Matt. I know this is not going to be our last encounter, but we do appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Coming out, Matt.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
Seriously, though, I did get my learn on.
Yeah, it's a great product. It simplifies everything that you're doing. As an installer, as a salesperson, everything becomes simpler. It's 3 modules, and you can cover.
I was just going to ask, what about inventory? How do you attack that?
Inventory wise, to me, if I was a retailer, it's less SKUs for me. It's a SKU and a T harness, and that's, the T harnesses are considerably less money to stock than the actual electronics themselves. So, if you have a few of the RRs or the RR2s in stock and multiple harnesses, you have less inventory dollars at the end of the day, which makes you more profitable in the long run as a retailer.
100%. That was a cool one, man. That was a cool one. Onward to the next.
I think I got my learn on there a little bit. There's some stuff I was going, wow, I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
There you go.
So.
But before we go, should we let the viewers know about a contest you have going on?
Yeah, let's talk about a few specials we got going on right now. Let's do the JVC one first.
Boom. How about that? Hold on a second. Let me full screen that for you boys and girls, I should say. There you go. Look at that.
So let's talk about everybody that's viewing today with a promo code. We're going to use CMA JVC as a promo code. We're going to give away one of the 10.1 KWZ1000Ws during this next 2 weeks of Industry Week. All you have to do is send an email to webmaster@importel.com. Give us your name, your company name, and state the promo code, and we'll enter you into that draw to win this radio. It's not on there, but as a bonus, as of this morning, one of our partners, SiriusXM, has stepped up and graciously added a SXV 300 to this unit and 1 year of free service as well. So as it's not on there, but it is part of the package for the draw on April 5th. So get your entries into webmaster@importel.com.
I do have a question for you, Kelly. Do you have to be an existing Importel customer?
You do.
Okay.
So create an account. And so if
create
you're
an account,
in,
buy a Maestro, buy a Maestro.
Create an account while you're at it. Let's get going. It's time.
All right, let's quickly move on to some other goodies that we can talk about.
Let's do our 2-week CMA 5% off.
How about this one right here?
That one right there. So for the next 2 weeks till March 31st, roughly 2 weeks to March 31st, we're going to do a 5% discount on all discountable products. one-time order per person. It's not one product, it's one order, 5% off. You have to list promo code CMAIW-IMP5 to receive the 5% discount. When doing web orders, put that into the comment section. And if you're doing phone orders, which we still suggest web orders, give it to us verbally.
Last but not least, Matt touched on this brand, which is Arc Audio, which we have a huge presentation going on Thursday with Fred, an hour and a half.
Yeah, this is just a little teaser for everybody. I think you want to tune in at 7 on Thursday till 8:30 to hear Fred. We're going to be giving away some exclusive prizes while Fred's doing his presentation.
I like how you're not giving us detail about what that prize is.
Not that one. That one's going to be a good one.
All right, so it's worth your time. You're looking at some higher end car audio solutions, DSP especially, DSP amplifiers. I got Fred all to myself for an hour and a half.
And I have one more. Everybody check your inbox. As of this morning, there was more CMA specials that are out on your inbox with something from almost every brand that's presenting. There'll be a special offer in your inbox as of this morning. So make sure you check it.
Bonus if you're already an existing Importel customer, make sure you check your inbox. Kelly, we got to go because we got another one to do.
We do. We're off.
See you
in a couple minutes.
All right. There you have it, guys. Maestro ADS iData Solutions with all they're offering for OEM integration for this year, courtesy of Importel. I got to jump off. We'll see you on the next one. Until next time, we connect.